Hey everyone! Today we're going to learn about JavaScript promises. Promises are a really useful tool to use when working with asynchronous code. They make callbacks look silly and outdated. Let's set up a fake HTTP function. We'll do it using callbacks and then refactor to use promises to compare. Our HTTP method will take in a URL, method, success callback, and error handler. Inside, we'll create a set timeout with a delay of 1 second to simulate a delayed network request. We'll create an undefined variable for data and add an if check. If data exists, we'll call the success callback with the data. If not, we'll call the error handler with an error message, no data. Now let's call our method and see it in action. We'll call HTTP, pass a URL, a method, a success callback, which expects data, and our error handler, which expects an error. We'll just console log the data and the error. We'll run our code. Because data is undefined, it calls the error callback. Let's set data and see that it gets into the success callback when data is defined. Now let's refactor this to use promises instead of callbacks. First, we simplify our function by removing the success and error callbacks. We'll set up a new promise object, which takes a single function that has 2 parameters, resolve and reject. We'll put the set timeout code inside of the promise and return the promise from our HTTP function. Now instead of success callback, we call resolve with the data. And instead of error handler, we'll call reject. Our code didn't have to change very much to switch to using promises. It's the same with the usage. Promises have built-in methods for handling success and error scenarios, then and catch. Let's simplify the call here. We only pass URL and method. Now we'll drop the success callback onto a new line and call then, passing the function. We'll do the same for the error handler, but call catch instead of then. And that's it. We've refactored to use promises instead of callbacks. Let's run it to make sure it works like before. We see that we get into the then and console the data. Let's make sure we get into the catch by removing data and run again. And we get our error, no data. So what was the point of this? Let's take a look at some of the advantages we gain by using promises instead of callbacks in our code. One of the great things about using promises over callbacks is exception handling. As long as we have our catch function, our promise code is protected from uncaught exceptions. Let's add a message to the catch console log so it's clear whether the exception ends up in our catch. Instead of console logging in the then, let's throw a new error. We see that it's caught in our catch function. Even if we throw inside the promise, it'll end up in our catch. This is a huge improvement over callbacks, where we would need to have multiple try-catch blocks to catch any of these errors. Promises also let us use return in our code, where callbacks do not. Let's add a return statement in our then function. In production code, we'll usually manipulate the data and return new data in the then of our promise. So let's return the data but call to uppercase on it. Now let's add another then and see what the data looks like. We'll console log it and set data so that it gets into our resolve handler. And see that it's all uppercase. Return is super important with promises, so let's spend a little time getting a good grasp on how to use it. As a best practice, we need to make sure to always return or throw. We can either return a new promise or a synchronous value like a string or an object. Let's see why. We'll add another then and console log the data. We see our first console log, but the second one is undefined. This is because our last then didn't return anything. And in JavaScript, that's equivalent to returning undefined. This is a really common pitfall that can cause major problems, so make sure to at least return the data that was received. So let's recap. We saw that promises help us work with asynchronous code and have a number of advantages over callbacks, especially with error handling. We've used the then and catch methods on our promises and learned about their basic usage. We've also come across the first common pitfall with promises, forgetting to return a value, and learned that we should always return in our then functions. In the next video, we'll look at promises that return other promises for multi-step asynchronous workflows.